Arya didn't plan for her night to fall apart. But somehow, life always knew how to hit her when she was already down. The diner lights buzzed above her as she wiped the last table. Her manager, a short man with a shiny forehead and zero patience, stood by the counter with his arms crossed. "Arya," he said, not even looking at her. "We're letting you go." She blinked. "What? Why? You've been late twice this week. I had to take the bus. And we can't keep giving chances. Sorry." He wasn't sorry. Not even a little. Arya stepped outside with her backpack slung over her shoulder, the cold air biting her skin. The street was quiet. Only the soft sound of distant traffic and the neon sign flickering behind her. Another job gone. Another bill she wouldn't be able to pay. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and started walking. Her shoes slapped the wet pavement, sending tiny splashes up her legs. She told herself not to cry. Not here. Not now. But her eyes still burned. "Just one more thing," she whispered to herself. "Please don't let tonight get any worse." But life didn't hear her. Or maybe it did, and it laughed. Halfway down the dark street, Arya stopped. A black car was parked at the corner, sleek, tinted, too fancy for this neighborhood. The headlights were off, but the engine was running low, almost like a growl. Something about it made her chest tighten. She swallowed and took one careful step forward. Then she heard it. A voice deep, angry. Another voice pleading. Her heartbeat jumped. Arya moved closer to the wall and peeked around the corner. Two men stood in the alley. One was tall, built, and dressed in black from head to toe. The other was smaller, shaking, his back pressed against the brick wall. The tall man grabbed the smaller man by the collar. "You think you can steal from the Moretti family?" he growled. "Moretti!" Arya froze. She'd heard that name before. Everyone in the city had. The Mafia family nobody messed with. The one you avoided even in stories. She pressed a hand over her mouth. The tall man's voice was cold, controlled, dangerous. "Tell me where the money is." I don't have it," the smaller man cried. The tall man didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just sighed like he was tired, like he didn't want to be doing this. And that scared Arya more. He pulled something from his jacket. Not a gun, just a knife. Steel flashed under the alley light. Arya's breath hitched. Her whole body froze. She should run. She should turn back. She should pretend she never saw this. But her feet didn't move. The small man cried louder. "Please, I'll get it, I swear!" The tall man stepped forward, Arya gasped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't meant to be loud. But the tall man heard it. His head snapped up. His eyes locked on her corner. Arya's heart stopped. He started walking toward her. Slow, steady steps. His shadow stretched across the pavement as he turned the corner, and then he saw her fully. Arya felt her knees weaken. He was striking. Sharp jawline. Dark hair swept back. Tattoos curling up his neck. Eyes so intense she felt them in her bones. And he wasn't just anyone. He was Dante Moretti, the Mafia boss. "Oh God, what are you doing here?" he asked softly. Too softly. Arya shook her head fast. "Nothing. I didn't see anything, I swear." Dante stepped closer. She stepped back until her spine hit the brick wall. He studied her face like he was reading her thoughts. "You heard more than enough," he said. Her breath stuttered. "I won't say anything," she whispered. "I just want to go home." His eyes moved over her, not with desire, but with calculation. As if he was trying to solve some puzzle. "What's your name?" Arya hesitated. "Arya Woods." Dante repeated it quietly, like he was tasting it. "Arya." His hand lifted, fingers brushing her chin gently upward. She flinched. He didn't seem offended. "You look scared," he murmured. "Because you're terrifying," she whispered before thinking. A small corner of his mouth twitched, not a smile, more like a ghost of one. Then he leaned in slightly. "Relax. I'm not going to kill you." She didn't feel relieved, not even a little. Because men like him didn't say things without meaning something else. Dante let go of her chin and straightened. His voice dropped to something colder, more final. I'm going to give you two choices. Arya's mouth went dry. Okay. Choice one, he said, holding up a finger. You pretend you saw nothing, but you and I both know that won't be enough. Someone will come looking for you eventually. My enemies. Maybe my own men. Her stomach clenched. Choice two, he said as he slowly zipped his jacket. You walk away with protection and safety, but only if you do something for me. She shook her head. What do you want from me? He took a step closer, their faces inches apart. Pretend to be my girlfriend. Arya stared at him. What? You heard me, Dante said, voice deep and steady. I need a woman by my side. Tonight proved something my enemies think I'm distracted. Weak. You will help fix that. Arya opened her mouth, but no sound came out. This couldn't be real. Why me? She whispered. I'm nobody. Dante tilted his head slightly, eyeing her like she was something interesting he just found. You're exactly what I need. But he cut her off. It wasn't a request. Her breath caught. Behind him, shadows moved, more of his men stepping out from the alley. They didn't point guns or drag her away. They simply stood there, waiting. Like the decision was already made. Arya looked back at Dante. His eyes didn't move from hers. Why? She whispered. Again. Why pretend? Dante leaned in. So close she felt the warmth of his breath. Because, he said, his voice smooth as ice, a man with a girlfriend looks like he has everything under control. Arya's heartbeat roared in her ears. And Arya? His gaze dropped to her lips before returning to her eyes. You're going to make them believe you're mine. Her chest rose and fell fast. And if I say no? Dante's eyes darkened. Then things get dangerous. For you. Arya felt the world tilt. She breathed once, twice, then softly, with her voice shaking. Okay, I'll do it. Dante's lips lifted just a little. Not a smile. Something sharper. Good girl. Her breath hitched. He stepped back, turned toward the alley, then looked at her over his shoulder. Follow me, Arya. Your life just changed. She stared at his back, feeling her heart pound harder than it ever had, because she knew nothing about her life would ever be the same again. Arya followed Dante out of the dark alley, her steps shaky, her heartbeat pounding so loud she could almost hear it in her ears. She kept a small distance behind him, afraid to be too close, but also afraid to be too far. His men walked around them, quiet, watchful, dangerous. They didn't look at her, but she felt their presence like cold wind against her skin. The black car she noticed earlier pulled up in front of them. One of the men opened the back door. Dante didn't speak. He just turned his head slightly. A silent command. Arya swallowed. You want me to get in? Dante didn't answer with words. He simply waited. Arya climbed in. The inside of the car smelled like leather and something dark and expensive she couldn't name. The seat swallowed her small frame. Dante slid in next to her, his body so close she could feel the heat coming off him. The door shut, and the world outside disappeared. The car began to move. Arya stared at, her hands in her lap, her fingers twisting nervously. Minutes passed, quiet and heavy. Finally, Dante spoke. Why were you out so late? His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a blade. Arya hesitated. I just finished work. Where? At the diner on 7th Street. He looked out the window as if he was thinking about something else entirely. Arya felt the heat rise in her chest. I got fired tonight. Dante's gaze slowly turned back to her. Why? Because I was late. She tried to laugh, but it came out broken. Life hates me, I guess. For a second, just a second, she thought she saw something soften in his eyes, but it vanished as fast as it came. You don't belong working at a diner, he said quietly. Arya frowned. And what does that mean? He didn't answer. The car drove through the city, lights flashing across the windows. Arya felt small, lost, like she had been picked up by a storm she never saw coming. Dante leaned back against the seat, one arm on the door, the other resting casually on his knee, powerful, calm, in control of everything. Except maybe himself. Arya caught him looking at her more than once. Each time she looked away quickly. Finally, she whispered, "Why did you choose me?" He didn't look away this time. "You're normal," he said. Her eyebrows shot up. "Wow. Thanks." He smirked a little. That wasn't an insult. Sure sounded like one. He studied her face like she was a puzzle he was still deciding if he should solve. "You're normal," he repeated slowly. "And you're innocent." Arya blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." His eyes moved over her face, her nervous lips, her worried eyes, the way she held her hands together tightly. "You're scared," he said softly. "Of course I'm scared," Arya whispered. You. Dante didn't look away. Then he leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping, deep and calm. "And yet you agreed to come with me." Arya swallowed. "Because I didn't want to die," she wanted to say. "Because your men looked like they'd bury me if I blinked wrong. Because I had no other choice." She didn't say any of that. Instead, she whispered, "What do you need from me exactly?" That's the moment the car finally slowed, then stopped in front of tall iron gates. They opened automatically, as if the whole world obeyed Dante Moretti without question. Beyond the gates stood a massive mansion, dark, elegant, glowing with golden lights. Arya's mouth dropped slightly. She had never seen something like this in real life. The car pulled into the driveway. Dante turned to her before the doors even opened. "I need you," he said, "to pretend to be my girlfriend." Arya nodded slowly. "Yes, you said that. But how far does that go?" "Far enough that everyone believes it." Her stomach twisted. He continued, his tone calm but serious. "You'll live in my house. You'll attend events with me. Dinners, meetings, parties. Wherever I go, you go." Arya's eyes widened. "Live here? With you?" Dante didn't blink. "Yes." Arya pressed her back into the seat. "Dante, I'm not built for this life." His eyes locked onto hers. "You don't have to be built for it," he said softly. "Just stay close. Do what I tell you, and you'll be safe." Safe. Was that truly possible around a man like him? The car door opened. Luca, his right-hand man, stood outside. Cold eyes, unreadable expression. Dante stepped out first. Then he looked at her from the open door. "Come." Arya slid out of the car, her legs unsteady. She wrapped her arms around herself as a cold breeze brushed her skin. The mansion door opened as they approached, 2 guards standing on each side. Inside, the foyer was huge marble floors, tall ceilings, warm, lights shining on expensive furniture. A staircase curled up like something out of a movie. Arya felt small again, out of place, wrong. Dante walked a few steps ahead before turning to her. "Arya." She looked up quickly. "This is not a joke," he said. "This is not a game. Once you enter this life, everything changes." "I know," she whispered. "But what do you really want from me? Why me?" Dante took 2 slow steps toward her. She felt her breath catch. "You're believable," he said. "That's it? You chose me because I look believable?" Dante's jaw tightened. "No. I chose you because I need someone who won't fall in love with me." Arya's heart dropped. "Why would you think?" He cut her off sharply. "That is my one condition." Her lips parted. "If you stay," he said, voice low and serious. "You don't fall in love with me. Not ever." Arya felt her breath stutter. Why did that hurt? She barely knew him. "I won't," she whispered. "I would never." "Good," Dante said. But something in his eyes flickered, something he quickly hid. He stepped back, giving her space. "Your room is upstairs. Luca will show you. Tomorrow morning, we begin the act." Arya stared at him, trying to read him, trying to understand what kind of man sets a rule like that. Finally, she asked quietly, "Why does it matter so much?" "If someone falls in love with you?" Dante turned his back to her. He didn't look at her when he answered. "Because love makes people weak." Arya felt a small ache in her chest. She didn't know why. Dante walked away without another word, his shadow stretching across the marble floor. Luca motioned for her to follow him upstairs. Arya forced her feet to move, though her mind stayed behind, replaying Dante's words. "Don't fall in love with me. Love makes people weak." Arya whispered to herself as she climbed the stairs, "I won't fall for you." But even she could hear the doubt in her own voice. Arya followed Luca up the sweeping staircase, her hand trailing along the cold marble railing. Every step echoed through the mansion, bouncing off the high ceilings like she didn't belong there, like she was walking into someone else's life. Maybe she was. She kept glancing back down at the foyer where Dante had disappeared. He moved like shadows followed him, like darkness was loyal to him. And now she was supposed to pretend to be his girlfriend. Her chest tightened. "This way." Luca's voice pulled her out of her thoughts. He wasn't as terrifying as Dante, but he wasn't friendly either. His face was sharp, unreadable. His eyes held no emotion at all, as if life had squeezed all of it out of him years ago. He walked with confidence, each step steady and quiet. A man trained to move without making noise. A man who had probably seen more death than she had seen birthdays. Arya kept her eyes on his back, afraid to say anything unless he spoke first. At the end of the long hallway, Luca opened a door and stepped aside. "This is your room," he said flatly. Arya stepped inside. She froze. The room was beautiful, too beautiful. Soft white bedding, warm lights, a big window looking out into a garden with lanterns glowing along the path. Everything looked rich, clean, safe. The exact opposite of her entire life. "I can't stay here," she whispered without meaning to. Luca lifted an eyebrow. "You already agreed, Miss Woods." Arya turned to him. "Please, Arya. Call me Arya." He stared at her for 2 long seconds, then nodded once. "Arya." It sounded strange, coming from him. She set her backpack on the bed, the old, faded one she'd used for years. It looked out of place, like a single wrong note in a perfect song. Luca stepped back to the doorway. "Someone will bring you clothes, toiletries, anything you need." "Wait," Arya said quickly. "Can I ask something?" He paused. She licked her dry lips. "Why? Why did Dante choose me?" Luca's jaw tightened slightly, the first hint of emotion she'd seen on him. "Dante doesn't choose people lightly," he said. "If he chose you, it's because you fit what he needs." "But what does he need?" Arya asked, her voice cracking. Luca looked away, eyes fixed down the hallway. "Protection," he said quietly. "For the family," he added, almost as an afterthought. Arya frowned. "How does pretending to date me protect him?" Luca's eyes met hers again, sharp, direct. "Because the last time he cared about someone, she died." The words punched the air out of her lungs. Arya stared at him, unable to speak. Luca didn't explain further. He simply said, "Good night," and closed the door. Arya sat on the bed, her knees pulled up to her chest. She should be relieved. She wasn't dead. She wasn't kidnapped and thrown into some basement. But she also wasn't free. She was in a mansion belonging to a mafia boss who didn't want anyone to fall in love with him. And the worst part? She didn't understand why that rule even hurt her a little. The next morning came too fast. Arya woke to soft knocking. She blinked against the bright sunlight seeping in through the curtains. "Arya?" A woman called from outside. "I have breakfast for you." Arya scrambled out of bed, her hair messy, eyes still half shut. She opened the door to find a kind-looking older woman holding a tray of food. "Good morning, dear," the woman said warmly. "I'm Elena. I help around the house." Arya relaxed a little. "Morning." Elena placed the tray on a small table near the window. Dante asked me to make sure you eat. He asked that? Arya whispered. Elena smiled softly. He's not as cold as he looks. Arya didn't know what to say to that. Once Elena left, Arya ate quietly, still, feeling like an intruder. Then she changed into the clothes someone had placed in the closet, simple jeans and a comfortable white top. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. Surprisingly, it fit perfectly. Was that planned? Probably. She took a deep breath and opened her door. The hallway was quiet, except she heard faint voices downstairs. She followed the sound carefully. Halfway down the stairs, she stopped when she heard Dante's voice. No, keep eyes on Romano. If he moves, I want to know before he even takes a breath. His tone was firm, controlled. Dangerous. Romano. She remembered that name from the night before. The rival boss. Arya took 2 steps down before the floor creaked. Dante's head snapped up. Their eyes met. Arya froze. He stood there in the foyer, wearing a black shirt that hugged his body too well and made her mouth go dry. A small tattoo peeked from under the collar. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong forearms marked with ink. He didn't move at first, just looked at her like he was trying to figure out what she was thinking. Then he nodded slightly. Come downstairs, Arya. Her legs carried her even though her brain screamed to turn and run. When she reached the last step, Dante's eyes moved over her clothes. That fits well, he said. Did you pick them? She asked quietly. No, he said, but I approved them. Her stomach did a strange little flip. He gestured to the living room. Sit with me. We need to talk about what happens from now on. Arya sat on the edge of the couch. Dante sat beside her, but not too close, just close enough that she could feel the power in the air around him. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. Arya, he said softly, if you're going to stay here, you need to understand what it means. She nodded, heart racing. Tonight, Dante continued, will be your first public appearance. Arya's eyes widened. Tonight? Already? Yes. Her breath shook. I don't know anything about your world. You don't need to know everything, Dante said. You just need to stay beside me. Her cheeks heated. Like, holding hands? Dante turned his head, eyes locking onto hers. More than that, he said quietly. You will act like you belong with me. Like you choose me. Like you are mine. Her pulse quickened. Dante noticed. He always noticed. There will be people watching, he continued. Enemies. Friends. People who want to tear me down. They'll look at you the same way they look at me. With suspicion. Arya swallowed hard. Dante leaned closer, his voice deep and calm. You don't have to be brave. Just stay close to me. Her chest tightened. Why do you talk like danger is around every corner? Because it is, Dante said. And once people see you with me, they'll know you're under my protection, Arya whispered. And your condition? About not falling in love with you? Dante's jaw tightened slightly. He looked away before speaking. That condition still stands. Arya nodded, even though something inside her sank. Dante stood. Get ready before 6, he said. Someone will help you choose a dress. A dress? She squeaked. You'll look beautiful, he said, almost too quickly. Then he caught himself and cleared his throat. For the act. Arya's heart fluttered in a way she didn't want it to. Dante walked past her, but paused behind her for a moment. Don't worry, he murmured. I won't let anything happen to you. His voice was so soft, she almost didn't hear it. She didn't realize she was holding her breath until the sound of his footsteps faded, and she whispered to herself, What did I get myself into? Arya spent most of the day pacing her room, back and forth. Back and forth. Her mind was loud, but her room was too quiet. Every now and then she would stop and stare at the dress hanging on the closet door. A deep emerald green gown Elena had brought up earlier. Mr. Moretti said this one. Elena had whispered with a small smile. Arya didn't know how to feel about that. He approved her clothes. He picked her dress. He talked like danger was normal. He expected her to stay close tonight. He reminded her again not to fall in love with him. Her life was a joke. A loud, chaotic, unbelievable joke. She rubbed her hands over her face. What kind of girl agrees to this? She muttered to herself. Someone knocked firmly on her door. Her heart jumped. Only one person in this house knocked like that. Come in, she said quietly. Dante stepped inside, dressed in a black suit that fit him too perfectly. His hair slicked back, his jaw sharp, his eyes dark and unreadable. He filled the room the second he entered. Arya stood straighter without meaning to. His gaze moved, over the dress, then to her face. You haven't changed yet, he said. I will, she replied quickly. I'm just thinking. Don't think too much, he said softly. It only makes fear louder. Arya swallowed. Easy for you to say. You're not the one faking your entire life in one night. Arya, Dante's tone made her look up. You're doing fine. She wasn't. But hearing him say that made something warm press against her ribs. Silence settled for a moment. Then Dante slid his hands into his pockets and said casually, Your bills are taken care of. Arya blinked. My what? Your bills, he repeated as if it were the most normal thing. Electricity, rent, hospital debt, everything. Arya's mouth fell open. What? Why would you do that? You were struggling, Dante said. You won't struggle here. No, Arya snapped, surprising herself. No, you can't just Dante. That's my life, my responsibility. You can't just pay everything behind my back. He tilted his head slightly. Would you rather the lights in your apartment get cut off? It's not about the lights. Then what is it about? Arya's breath trembled. It makes me feel like I owe you, like I'm trapped. Dante took one slow step toward her, then another. He stopped when he stood in front of her, his shadow brushing over her feet. You're not trapped, he said quietly. You're protected. That's the same thing in your world, she whispered. Dante's jaw clenched. For a second, something flashed in his eyes, annoyance, maybe even guilt. He looked away. I paid them, he said. It's done. Arguing won't change it. Arya threw her hands up. You can't just decide things for me. His eyes snapped back to hers, sharp, strong, steady. Arya, he said in a low, controlled tone that made her pulse jump. If I'm keeping you here, the least I can do is make sure your life outside doesn't fall apart. That shut her up. Her anger softened into something else, exhaustion, maybe, or acceptance. She rubbed her arm slowly. You should have asked. Dante's eyes softened just barely. I don't ask when someone needs help. Arya breathed out shakily, her voice dropping. Okay, fine, whatever. It's done. Thank you. Dante nodded once, like he was relieved she wasn't fighting anymore. He stepped back and glanced at the dress again. Wear that one, he said. It'll look good on you. Her cheeks warmed. You always talk like you know everything. A tiny corner of his mouth tugged. I know enough. Arya's heart did a soft, stupid flip. Dante turned toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. We leave at 7, he said. When people see you with me tonight, they'll believe it instantly. Because of the dress? Arya asked. No, he said without turning. Because of the way I'll look at you. Her breath caught. Dante finally glanced back, eyes darker than before. Get ready, he murmured. Then he walked out, closing the door behind him. Arya stood there for a long time, her heartbeat racing, her fingers brushing over the soft fabric of the dress. What is he doing to me? She whispered. Then she took a deep breath and reached for the zipper. Tonight, her fake life began, and she wasn't ready for any of it. Arya stood in front of the mirror, staring at the emerald green dress Elena had picked. Her fingers grazed the soft fabric, feeling the weight of it heavy in a way that matched the tension in her chest. She had never worn anything like this before, never walked into a room knowing everyone would be watching. The thought made her stomach twist. "What am I doing?" she whispered, her voice small. "I don't belong in this world." She tugged at the neckline, trying to make it less obvious that her hands were shaking. She couldn't. The dress clung to her in all the right places, flowing perfectly at the bottom, elegant but daring. The knock came before she could argue with herself. "Arya, it's time," Elena's voice said softly. "He's waiting." Arya swallowed, the lump in her throat threatening to choke her. She took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, she muttered. "I can do this." Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she descended the stairs, each step echoing louder than the last. Her heart was pounding so fast she could feel it in her temples. The foyer looked different in the evening light, warm, golden, almost unreal. Dante was there, leaning against the staircase railing, hands in his pockets. His dark suit hugged him like it was molded to his body, the black fabric absorbing the light around him. He didn't look at her at first, but she felt him, like she always did. "Arya," he said finally, his voice low and calm, cutting through the hum of her racing heartbeat. She looked up. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, every movement measured, controlled, dangerous. She felt exposed under his gaze. "You're late," he said softly, but there was no anger, just focus. She faltered. "I wasn't sure how to—" He didn't let her finish. His eyes took her in, top to bottom, and for a moment, her nerves melted into something hotter, fiercer, and entirely new. "You look!" His voice dropped slightly. "Good." Arya's face flushed. Thanks." He didn't smile. Not really, but the corner of his mouth twitched, and that was enough to make her knees feel weak. Dante gestured toward the massive doors at the end of the hallway. "Let's go." Her breath hitched. The world beyond those doors wasn't her world. It was his, full of people who watched, judged, whispered. She took a step forward, then another. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, a rhythm that seemed to match her heartbeat. When Dante's hand brushed against hers, just slightly, a shiver ran down her spine. He didn't hold it, didn't linger, but the brush of skin made her stomach twist in ways she wasn't ready for. The doors opened. Light, noise, music, laughter. The room was enormous crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, gold accents glimmered, and men and women in expensive clothing moved like they owned the air, and all of them turned to look at her. Arya's stomach dropped. Every pair of eyes on her felt like a physical weight pressing down. She tried to keep her posture straight, her chin lifted. Dante stepped beside her, just close enough that she could feel his body heat, just far enough that she had to remind herself she wasn't touching him. "Stick close," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. She nodded, barely breathing. Her fingers grazed the side of his arm. Careful, accidental, wanting to anchor herself. The first person approached a man in a tailored suit, eyes flicking between her and Dante. "So, this is the girl," he said, voice smooth. "The one who'll make him complete?" Dante didn't respond immediately. He just tilted his head, his gaze sweeping over the man like he was assessing how much he mattered. The man swallowed, caught in Dante's quiet storm of presence. "She's new," Dante said finally. "You'll get used to it." Arya's mouth went dry, her heart hammered in her chest. They moved deeper into the room. Arya felt the eyes of the crowd follow her with every step. She could hear the whispers, see the flicks of curious stares. She wasn't sure if it was fear or curiosity that made her pulse spike. "Keep walking," Dante whispered, his hand brushing hers again. Just a flicker. That small contact was enough to set her nerves on fire. They stopped near the center of the room. Dante didn't let go, of her hand entirely this time, His fingers wrapped lightly around hers, possessive without claiming, protective without warning. Arya's stomach twisted. She could feel the heat rising to her cheeks. A woman approached, one of Dante's usual contacts, eyes sharp as a hawk. She studied Arya for a long moment. Then she nodded. "She'll do," the woman said, stepping back. Arya let out a shaky breath. The first test was over. For now, Dante didn't let her go. Not yet. His hand tightened slightly around hers as he leaned toward her ear. "Breathe," he murmured. "They'll judge. They always do. But you're with me." Arya nodded, feeling the warmth of his words settle in her chest. She tried to let go of some of the fear. Some, not all. They moved through the crowd. Arya's pulse kept time with her footsteps. Every whisper, every glance made her heart leap. Then suddenly someone she didn't recognize stepped forward, a man with a cocky smile and sharp eyes. Well, he said. "This is him with a girlfriend? Interesting choice." Arya stiffened. Her mind screamed. "Say nothing. Stay calm. Don't make a fool of yourself." Dante's hand tightened around hers. He leaned slightly forward, not angry, not threatening, just enough to remind everyone this girl was under his protection. "She's exactly what I need," Dante said quietly. His voice didn't carry a threat, but the weight behind it was undeniable. The man smiled, a little too confidently, and moved on. Arya let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Dante glanced down at her, his eyes sharp. "You did fine," he murmured. I think I did okay," she said, voice shaking. "I didn't even faint." He tilted his head slightly, a flicker of humor in his eyes that made her chest tighten. "You're stronger than you think," he said softly. Arya's mind spun. "Stronger than I think? Or stronger because he's here?" The night continued. Conversations, toasts, the hum of music. Arya stuck close to Dante, her fingers occasionally brushing against his arm, each time sending a jolt up her spine. Then it happened. A loud crash from the far side of the room. Someone had knocked over a glass, and all eyes flicked toward the sound. Arya's body froze. Her heart jumped. Dante's hand tightened around hers immediately, his other hand brushing lightly over her back, guiding her. Protective, calm, dominant. "Stay with me," he murmured. The crowd moved on, unaware of the danger they hadn't even realized. But Arya's chest still raced. "Everything okay?" she whispered, looking up at him. He leaned slightly closer, voice low. "It's fine. No one's touching you." Arya's knees went weak. "No one's touching me. Except him." The thought was dizzying. By the time the evening ended, Arya felt drained, exhilarated, and completely overwhelmed. As Dante walked her back to the mansion, he stayed, close. Not too close. Not too far. Just there. Arya's hands brushed against his more than once. Each time, her stomach fluttered. When they finally reached the doors of the mansion, Dante stopped and looked at her. "You did well tonight," he said softly. "Better than I expected." Arya blinked, caught off guard. "Better than you expected?" He tilted his head slightly, the faintest corner of a smirk tugging at his lips. "I think you surprised both of us." Her chest tightened, a strange warmth spreading across her body. She wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't belong, that she wasn't ready. But the words died in her throat. Dante didn't push. He simply stood there, his presence a solid anchor in the chaos of her mind. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low. "We do it again, only bigger." Arya swallowed, nodding. Her hands brushed the fabric of her dress once more. She felt exposed, small, and terrified. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark ignited. A spark she didn't understand, didn't want to admit. Dante turned, walking toward the shadows of the mansion. She followed, careful, trembling, and utterly aware of the way his eyes lingered on her. Tonight, she had survived. Tomorrow, She wasn't sure she would, but one thing was certain. Nothing in her life would ever feel normal again. The morning sunlight fell softly through the tall windows, painting the mansion's walls gold. Arya stood at the edge of the garden, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, trying to steady her nerves. It had been 3 days since the party. 3 days of walking on a tightrope between pretending and reality. She had learned quickly. Every glance, every word, every movement mattered. And Dante had stayed near, not in a way that crushed her, but enough to make her aware of him constantly. A soft voice behind her made her jump. "Morning, Arya." She turned. Dante stood at the doorway, hands loosely in his pockets. His suit was lighter than last night, more casual, but still perfectly fitted. He didn't tower over her here. He looked easier, less imposing. "Morning," she replied, brushing her palms over her jeans. "You're up early," he shrugged, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd see how my new girlfriend is adjusting." Her cheeks heated. New girlfriend. It sounded so strange out loud, even if it was all pretend. I think I'm managing," she said quickly. "Mostly." Dante's gaze softened as he stepped closer. Not touching, just close enough that the air between them felt warmer. "Mostly is good. That's a start." She bit her lip, looking down at her hands. "I keep thinking about last night, about everyone staring. I felt ridiculous." "You didn't look ridiculous." He moved a step closer, tilting his head slightly. "You looked like you belonged, even if you didn't believe it." Arya blinked, startled. His voice didn't command. It didn't dominate. It was calm, thoughtful, gentle, a side of him she hadn't seen yet. "Even if I didn't belong?" she whispered. "Yes," he said softly, his eyes holding hers. Even then, her stomach fluttered, a strange heat spreading through her chest. She realized suddenly that she wanted to believe him. Not because of the act, not because she had to, but because something about the way he said it made the world feel smaller, quieter, safer. They stood there in the garden, the silence stretching comfortably. Birds chirped, the wind rustled the leaves, and Arya felt her pulse slow a little, until a sharp sound cut through the calm. A car engine. Loud. Too loud. Arya's breath caught. Dante's head snapped toward the driveway. His jaw tightened, but his posture stayed relaxed. He moved first, heading toward the sound with swift, quiet steps. Arya followed, heart pounding. She wanted to freeze, wanted to hide, but something told her to stay close. The driveway was empty, except for a black car that had pulled up and stopped abruptly. One man got out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a dangerous air about him. But it wasn't Dante's kind of danger. This was sharp, unpredictable, the kind that made your gut twist. Arya's stomach sank. "Romano," Dante said softly, almost under his breath. The man's eyes flicked over the mansion, over Dante, and then they landed on Arya. His gaze lingered longer than it should have. Arya's hands trembled. She tried to step back, but Dante's hand brushed lightly against her shoulder. Not grabbing, not pulling, just enough to steady her. "You should stay close," he said, low and calm. Her chest tightened. I will," the man Romano smirked. "So this is the girl, huh? Moretti's little surprise?" Dante didn't answer immediately. He took a single step forward, his body slightly shielding hers. Not aggressive, not threatening, but protective in a quiet, steady way. "She's with me," Dante said softly, not raising his voice. "That's all you need to know." Romano laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Is she? Really? Or is she just playing the part?" Arya's heart hammered. Every muscle in her body screamed. But Dante didn't flinch. He stayed calm, collected, watching her, aware of her fear, letting her see it, letting her feel it, but never using it against her. "You can leave," Dante said finally, voice quiet, steady. Or you can leave now. Romano's smirk faltered for the briefest moment. Careful, Dante. You're not invincible. I know, Dante said calmly. But she is. His gaze flicked to Arya, softer now, almost reassuring. And so am I. Together. Arya felt her chest squeeze. Together. The word felt like a promise, even if it was just for show. Romano stepped back, muttering something under his breath, then climbed into the car. The engine roared to life and disappeared down the driveway. Arya exhaled shakily, sliding her hands into her pockets. I thought he was going to... You're okay, Dante said, stepping closer. He didn't touch her this time, just leaned slightly, voice soft. Nothing happened, and nothing will. She swallowed hard. I don't know how you do that. Do what? He asked. Stay. Calm. Always. Dante's gaze softened. I'm not always calm, he admitted. Then, a flicker of a small smile. You just haven't seen the part where I panic yet. Her lips twitched. I'd rather not. He tilted his head, studying her. You handled yourself well today. You didn't run. You didn't scream. You stayed. Arya's chest fluttered. I had to. Dante nodded. Not pushing, not commanding. Just looking at her like she mattered. And in that moment, she did. For the first time, Arya realized she wanted him to notice her not as an act, not as a pretend girlfriend, but as herself. That thought made her stomach twist, a little dangerous, a little thrilling. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Elena brought breakfast up to the garden again, soft and warm, and Dante stayed nearby, never intrusive, just present. He asked her about small things, her sleep, whether she wanted more coffee, if she liked the garden. Nothing heavy, nothing commanding, just questions, gentle, normal, human. Arya found herself laughing quietly at one comment he made about the squirrels stealing birdseed. She realized she hadn't laughed like that in months. Dante's eyes flicked to her as she laughed, and for a second, the quiet tension of his presence shifted. He didn't smile fully, but the corner of his mouth lifted. You laugh too easily, he said, almost teasing. Maybe I finally feel safe, she said softly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His gaze said, enough. She was safe, and that was enough to make her heart feel lighter and more complicated than it had in years. The afternoon came, and Dante told her they would be attending another meeting with one of his business contacts. Arya followed, not because she had to, but because she wanted to be near him, to see how he moved in the world, how calm he could be when chaos approached. The meeting was tense. Arya stayed close, observing, and she noticed it. The way Dante let her take in the room, let her see, but never put her in danger. He spoke to her quietly before meetings, brief words of reassurance. He would touch her shoulder lightly, guide her through a crowd, hold the door open, never dominant, never harsh, and yet, every small action made her pulse quicken. Every small gesture made her stomach flutter. After the meeting, they walked through the city streets, Dante's hand brushing hers once as they crossed the road. Arya's breath caught, not from fear, but from the intimacy of it. Then, out of nowhere, a man stepped out from an alley, grabbing her arm roughly. Arya gasped, pulling back instinctively, but Dante was there immediately, his other hand brushing hers, and the protective edge in his voice low and deadly. Let go of her, he said, calm but sharp. The man hesitated, then, with a scowl, released her and backed away. Arya's knees felt weak. She pressed her hand to her chest, trying to calm her heartbeat. Dante's hand rested lightly against her back. Not holding, not forcing, just steadying, grounding. You okay? He asked softly. I think so, she whispered. His eyes met hers, softer than ever. You're stronger than you realize. She swallowed hard. words failing her. He didn't have to command her. He didn't have to dominate. He just stood there steady, calm, protective. And that was enough to make her want to lean closer, to feel safe under his quiet strength. Walking back to the mansion, side by side, she realized something. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was noticing him, noticing how it felt to be near him, to have him near. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted that more than she wanted to pretend. Arya woke to the soft hum of sunlight spilling into her room. For the first time in days, she didn't feel the sharp edge of fear. Not completely, anyway. The mansion felt less like a trap and more like a world she could navigate. Slowly, cautiously. After breakfast, Elena had brought her a small folder. "Dante asked me to help you understand some things," she said with a soft smile. "Not everything, but the basics. You'll need it." Arya opened it on the small writing desk by her window. Maps of the city, names of allies and rivals, a few faces she was supposed to recognize. Her head spun slightly, but she took a deep breath. "I can do this. I have to." When she finished studying, she heard a soft knock. "Arya?" Dante's voice. She looked up, and there he was, leaning casually against the doorframe. His dark hair fell just slightly into his eyes. But instead of the commanding, dangerous air she was used to, today he seemed quieter. "Morning," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Morning," he replied. Then, as if reading her thoughts, he added, "You've been at it for hours. Time for a break?" Arya blinked. I suppose." He stepped fully into the room, not crowding her, just close enough that the air between them felt warmer. "Come with me. I'll show you something." Curiosity fluttered in her chest. She followed him down the spiral staircase, through the marble foyer, and into the courtyard. The sun was bright, but the garden was shaded by tall trees. Birds chirped softly, and for a moment, the chaos of Dante's world, the threats, the enemies, the danger felt far away. Dante stopped near a small fountain, the water sparkling in the sunlight. He leaned against the stone edge, hands in his pockets, relaxed. "You've been thrown into a world you barely understand," he said softly. "I know it's overwhelming." Arya nodded. "You think?" He gave a faint smirk. "I think. And yet, you're still standing, still breathing, still paying attention." She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It's not easy. You expect a lot." "I do," he admitted, voice calm. "But not because I want to make it hard. Because I want you to survive, to adapt, and sometimes to notice things others don't." Arya swallowed. "Notice things others don't." It was advice, yes, but it was personal. He wanted her to see, to understand, and in a way, he trusted her. For a moment, they stood silently, watching the fountain water ripple. Arya hesitated. "I think I'm starting to understand your world a little better." Dante tilted his head, watching her. "A little better?" "Small steps," she said with a tiny smile. "I'm still terrified, but maybe not as much as the first night." He studied her, and for a fleeting second his usual intensity softened. "That's progress. And good. Very good." Arya's chest tightened at the faint warmth in his voice. She wanted to say more, but Dante didn't push. He never pushed. That was what made him dangerous, in a way she didn't fully understand. Suddenly, he moved closer, just slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You'll do more than understand," he said softly. "You'll survive, and I'll make sure of it." Her pulse quickened. She wanted to look away, but her eyes stayed on his. You don't have to do that." "I know," he said, "but I want to." The words lingered, quiet and heavy. She felt herself leaning just a fraction toward him, not because he asked, not because he commanded, but because she wanted to. And that realization startled her more than any threat ever could. A sudden sound, a car door slamming, shattered the calm. Arya jumped. Dante's head snapped toward the driveway, eyes sharp and alert. The garden, once serene, felt dangerous again. A man was walking up the path, confident, deliberate. He wore a dark coat, his hands tucked into his pockets, eyes cold and calculating. "Who is that?" Arya whispered, gripping Dante's arm lightly. He didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. His body shifted slightly, creating a subtle barrier between her and the intruder. "That's—" Dante's jaw tightened slightly. "An old acquaintance. Unwelcome. Dangerous." Arya's heart skipped. He's here for you?" "Yes," Dante said calmly, though his eyes were icy. "Or maybe for you. Depends on how lucky he feels." The man stopped a few feet away, his gaze sweeping over Dante, then settling on Arya. A smirk played on his lips. "So, this is the girl? Moretti's little shield?" Arya felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Shield?" Dante stepped closer, his presence steady and grounding. He didn't grab her. He didn't push. He simply made himself the wall between her and the threat. "She's with me," he said, voice low and calm. "And that's all you need to know." The man laughed, a short, sharp sound that made Arya's stomach twist. "You always choose the weak, Dante." "She's not weak," Dante replied evenly, eyes locking on hers for just a second. A subtle reassurance. "And you'll find that out if you try anything." The man's smirk faltered. He studied them both for a moment, then shook his head. "Careful, Dante. Careful with hearts. Especially hers." Arya's stomach dropped. "He knows?" Dante's gaze didn't waver from the man. "I know." The man turned and left, walking back to the car, leaving the garden silent again. Arya exhaled shakily. That was terrifying. Dante stepped closer after the man disappeared. He didn't touch her, just stood near, letting her regain her breath. "You handled it well," he said softly. "Better than I expected." Her pulse was still racing. I don't know how I did." "You stayed," he said simply. "That's all that mattered." For a moment, they stood there, the quiet between them heavy with unspoken words. Arya felt herself relax slightly, leaning into his presence, not fully, but enough to feel warmth. Dante tilted his head slightly, his gaze softer now. "You're stronger than you think, Arya. Not just because of danger, but because you notice, you pay attention, you care, and that makes a difference." She looked up, heart fluttering, and met his eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, a connection beyond words, beyond the act of pretending, something real, fragile, growing. I just want to do this right," she whispered. "You will," he said quietly. "And I'll help you. No pressure, no demands, just guidance. That's my promise." Arya felt her chest tighten, emotions she didn't fully understand pressing forward. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Just be careful. For both our sakes." They stayed a moment longer in the garden, the sunlight warm on their skin, the air thick with quiet tension. It wasn't domination. It wasn't control. It was care, protection, and something more subtle, more dangerous, the pull of something neither of them fully understood yet. But even in that moment, her pulse reminded her that danger could arrive at any second, that someone from his past could always appear to threaten her. And still, she felt a flicker of something daring, something alive, something that whispered she wasn't just surviving, she was beginning to live. And Dante, quiet, steady, protective, was there for it all. The day had dragged on longer than Arya expected. Meetings, introductions, and glances that felt like examinations had left her exhausted. By late afternoon, her legs ached, her head was spinning, and the thought of another event or dinner made her stomach twist. She was just about to slip away to her room when she heard Dante's voice behind her. "Arya," he said quietly, leaning against the doorway. His dark eyes met hers, calm, patient, yet something unreadable lingered in their depths. She turned slowly. "Yes? I'm taking you out," he said simply. Arya froze. "Out? Where?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere you don't have to pretend. Even for a moment. Just for a little while." Her chest tightened. I don't know if you're coming," he interrupted softly but not harshly. "It's not a request." Her lips parted, but she didn't argue. She didn't need to. Somehow, being near him made resistance feel impossible. A few minutes later, they stepped into his car. It was sleek, black, the hum of the engine low and steady. Dante didn't speak. At first, letting the quiet stretch between them, letting her breathe, Arya kept her eyes on her hands in her lap. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "Somewhere simple," he said. "You'll see." The city blurred past the windows. Arya noticed the skyscrapers, the flashing billboards, the honking cars, but none of it reached her mind. Her thoughts kept drifting to Dante. His calm, precise presence, the faint scent of him that clung to his coat, the way he seemed, present, even without trying. After a while, the car slowed, pulling onto a narrow, tree-lined street. They stopped in front of a small cafe tucked between two old brick buildings. It wasn't flashy. It didn't have golden signs or flashing lights. Just a warm, quiet place with a few tables outside and a soft light glowing through the windows. Arya blinked. "This is nice," she whispered. Dante gave a faint nod. "Simple. Quiet. No one will bother us here. It's been a long day. You deserve it," she swallowed. "Deserve? You've been thrown into a world that doesn't stop, that doesn't forgive," he said softly, opening the car door for her. "I thought you could use a moment without it." Arya's heart fluttered. A moment without it. She realized she had never had that. Not in weeks. Not since the night she met him. They walked inside, and the warmth of the cafe hit her. Soft jazz played from a corner speaker, the smell of coffee and baked bread mingling in the air. It felt ordinary, safe, comforting. A waiter led them to a corner table. Dante pulled out a chair for her, a small, quiet gesture, but it made her pulse skip. "Sit," he said softly. Arya did. She tried to keep her hands folded neatly in her lap, tried to look casual, but her pulse was loud, her mind a jumble of nerves and confusion. Dante sat opposite her. He didn't order right away. He just studied her. Not in a dangerous, calculating way, not like he was sizing her up to see if she would survive. Just looking, observing, almost tenderly. "You seem tired," he said finally, his voice low. She laughed nervously, a small broken sound. "You could say that again. Would you like something to eat?" he asked. "Coffee? Tea?" Coffee would be nice." Dante nodded and signaled the waiter. "2 coffees, please. Black." As the waiter left, the silence returned. It wasn't uncomfortable. Somehow, with him, silence didn't have to mean fear. It could just exist. Arya finally dared to look up. "Dante, why did you bring me here?" He leaned back, hands folded loosely on the table. "Because you need a reminder. Not everything in life is danger, threats, or appearances. Sometimes it's just quiet. Sometimes it's just this." He gestured slightly around the cafe. "No guards, no business calls, no enemies. Just a moment." Arya felt her chest tighten, the words hitting her more than any command or protection could. "Just a moment." She nodded slowly. "It's nice." Dante's lips curved faintly. Not a smile exactly, but close. "Good. You deserve nice." She wanted to say something, to respond, but the words got stuck. Instead, she found herself watching him, the way his hands rested calmly on the table, the faint tilt of his head as he looked at her, The way his eyes softened, not the dangerous intensity she'd come to expect, but something quieter, almost human. The waiter returned with 2 cups of coffee. Dante's fingers brushed hers slightly as he took his cup. The contact was brief, casual, but it made Arya's stomach flutter. They sipped quietly. The warm liquid grounded her, made the world feel less heavy, less sharp. For a few minutes, she could forget the mansion, the events, the threats. Forget that she was supposed to pretend to be his girlfriend, forget that her life had been turned upside down in a single night. Dante cleared his throat, softly. "You did well today," he said, eyes meeting hers. "At the meeting, during introductions, everyone noticed you. Not just because you're with me, but because you handle yourself. You're calm, observant. You didn't falter." Arya blinked, caught off guard. I didn't falter?" "You didn't?" he repeated. "Not once. And I didn't expect you to. Not yet." She felt warmth rise to her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," he said, voice soft. I'm just telling you what's true." For a moment, the air between them felt fragile, heavy with things neither of them said. Arya noticed the faint line of tension in his jaw, the tiny crease between his brows. And, for the first time, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared to acknowledge before, something beyond fear, beyond obligation, something like wanting him. Her throat went dry. She sipped her coffee, hoping he wouldn't notice. But of course, he did. "Are you nervous?" he asked quietly, eyes not leaving hers. She swallowed. "A little," she admitted. I've never done this kind of normal." He gave a small nod. "It's okay. It's fine. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for." Arya's heart thumped at the softness in his voice. He's not demanding. He's not controlling. He's careful. The words she didn't say hovered between them. "I'm scared. I like being here. I like being near you." Dante leaned slightly forward, voice lower, almost a whisper. "I want you to know, this isn't a test. Not everything has to be about surviving or pretending. You can just be." Her chest tightened. Just be," he repeated. "With me. Here. Now. No act. No enemies. No dangers. Just," he paused, studying her. "Just this." Arya felt heat rise to her cheeks. She didn't know what to say. Couldn't. She could. Only nod slowly, letting the moment settle over her. For a long while, they sat like that, quiet and together, sipping coffee, letting the world fade beyond the cafe walls. Outside, the city continued its chaos. Inside, they existed in a rare, fragile bubble of normal. And for the first time since she met him, Arya felt almost safe, almost human, almost free to feel something other than fear. Dante, beside her, wasn't dominating or controlling. He wasn't the terrifying, untouchable figure from the mansion's foyer. He was quiet, present, patient, protective without being forceful, a paradox she couldn't yet fully understand. As they finished their coffee, Dante placed his cup down, fingers brushing hers again lightly. "We should go," he said, voice calm. "Back to the mansion." Arya nodded. But she lingered for a second, letting the warmth of the moment stay with her a little longer. He noticed. Of course, he did. "You're welcome," he said quietly, as they rose. But his eyes lingered on hers longer than necessary, and she felt the pull of something unspoken between them. They walked back to the car in silence. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the street. Danger and chaos would return the moment they left the cafe. But for now, for just a little while, Arya had felt something she hadn't allowed herself in weeks. Quiet, connection, something tender, almost real. And Dante, always Dante, dark and dangerous, but softer than she'd realized, had given it to her. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she wanted more than survival.